One of the biggest areas I see people preparing for and getting nervous about is the police written exam or entrance exam. Let's discuss. Hey, before we get started, we have those gifts down in the description for you. First one is the Getting Started Workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. We have some hidden bonuses, including one of them in there is the new police candidate eligibility exam to see where you fall as a candidate. Just because you don't score high doesn't mean you're ineligible. Just because you score high doesn't mean that you're 100% going to get hired. Matter of fact, it's really going to come down to you and how you articulate yourself. But take a look at that. Next is a free coaching call with myself or any of the other instructors. We have a whole slew of new instructor cadre for you so that we can open up more time. Jump on a free coaching call. We'd be glad to help you with any aspect of your hiring process. Now, when it comes to the written exam and written exam prep, what are you looking at? Recently, I had someone reach out to me and comment and say, hey, this department that I'm looking at has a written exam and there's no prep material out there for this specific department. While that may be true, I've said this before and I'll say this again, time and time again. Any post exam, police officer selection test, right? The Pellet B, the CJBAT, the NTN, the Cops and Fires, the post, any of them, they all have three underlying core components: reading comprehension, writing, and vocabulary or grammar, right? Those core components can be studied in almost any written exam prep. So let me help you out here. Look at other departments that have open resources for their written exam prep. That could just Google it, right? Google police department written exam prep and look at it. Now they may have different components. You know, the NTN has their situational video segment and the Pellet B has their closed section. You know, some have math sections, some have, if you're looking at special agents, you know, those have kind of logic games. Some have additional, but those three core components, you can study that. So hidden tip for you, Google it and you get free access to theirs and study theirs. And that can help you in those three core components. In our online course, we have a lot of those, right? We have a lot of the websites where you can access the other departments' free open resource information, and you can see that. On top of it, we have a bunch of written exam prep for us. You can access that for a free trial if you want to. I'm not going to dive into that. That's not what this video is about. But those are areas that you can get access to it. There's a lot of that out there, but you have to know what you're studying. So if you're reading something that has a large paragraph and they're trying to say, hey, what does this paragraph mean, or what information can you pull out of this paragraph? Understand that might be reading comprehension. If you have a blurb or a sentence that says, hey, you know, read this passage and pick the correct answer that properly writes this passage out, understand that that's writing. A lot of people think that writing means you're going to have to write a full report. That's not usually the case. Most of the time you're analyzing writing to make sure that it's accurate and properly structured, you know, sentence structuring, things along those lines. That's what you'll see in a lot of these writing components. Now, I'm not going to say some organizations in some states don't have writing samples that you actually submit, but we found that that is a lot of evaluation for an individual, you know, that we're applying to. That, you know, if only 20% are making it through the hiring process and we're evaluating 400 candidates from a writing sample, you know, let's take 25% of that. That's 100 candidates that make it through, but we're evaluating 400. That's a lot of work for a recruitment division. And while you want the best candidates you can, you have to be reasonable in the amount of effort that you put into the recruitment process, specifically just the written exam portion, due to the fact that we're just trying to make sure that you possess the skills necessary to write a valid report at an acceptable level. One thing that we say in a lot of academies is we like reports written in about a 10th grade reading level, just due to the fact that, you know, if it's something that goes before a jury, or that it's an understandable yet professionally constructed report. So a lot of people think that, you know, you have to have some bachelor's or master's degree in order to effectively, you know, write a report or a police report. I promise you, no level of outside of actually practicing report writing for law enforcement. No level of college or anything is going to prepare you for report writing, because a lot of times there's certain requirements, and it could be department specific or it could be attorney specific. The district attorney might like their reports a certain way, with certain names all uppercase or certain things written in as suspect one. It just depends. Nothing will prepare you for it until you actually go into the academy. And then, even in your specific department, understand that you're probably going to have to go through and retailer your report writing a little bit there too. But you're only listing the facts. There's no subjectiveness, right? It's who, what, when, where, why, and how. And the only bit of subjectiveness is from your perspective, where you say, hey, I believed this was going to occur, but that's a fact, right? You're still listing it as a fact. So that's the writing component, and studying for that. That's why we don't really beat you up too much on that in the written exam for the writing component. So don't think you're going to have to write an entire report. Now you may have to use, or I've seen writing sections say, hey, watch this video and write a report on it. And really all they're telling you to do is you write notes, and it's not even, and this is for your written exam, right? Your police officer selection test. You're actually just writing notes so that you can go back and answer questions that will come out later on. So they'll show you a sample report and say, hey, write a report like this. And then that report is actually never submitted. You're only using that as notes for the, so it's more as field notes is what we call it in law enforcement. When you're taking notes before you write an official report, you take field notes, and that's really more of what you're doing. I've seen in written exams or your post exams. Going over to vocabulary and grammar, studying for that, that's pretty simple. Some simple rules to know: I before E except after C. Vocabulary would be spelling, grammar, and things like that. But you don't want to sit here and try to memorize all these spelling words in the world, because there's just too many. They can put whatever words they want in there. So understand that when you're using autocorrect and you're typing out a text message on your phone these days, or whatever you're doing, whether it's computer, phone, doesn't matter. Look at the words and look at what they're correcting them to. Because if you're commonly misspelling a word and then you see autocorrect fixing it, that's a good word for you to learn so that you can keep working on that. But, once again, there's plenty of law enforcement term preps. As I said, that's all in our online course as well. But you can go in there and look at terms that we commonly see in there. And then the other thing I see more often is grammar, right? Punctuation, things along those lines, that, hey, where does the comma go, or what needs to go in here to make this a correctly structured sentence. Things like that is something you will see a lot. But that's pretty self-explanatory. I wouldn't really, there's no real way to study for what words it would be in there other than learning grammatical rules, right? Go back to your early high school education and sentence structuring or paragraph structuring, and then that's where I would go. And then reading comprehension. This is probably where I see most people get jammed up, because you'll read an entire paragraph or blurb, and then they'll ask you, hey, what, if any, I shouldn't say what if any, what was the meaning, or what was the purpose of this, or what was the arrest that Sergeant Smith or Officer Smith was attempting to make here, or what prevented. They're going to see what you can draw out of that paragraph, and that's that reading comprehension. Can you actually formulate the correct opinion, right, or the correct thought process that the paragraph is leading you to? And that's kind of where your reading comprehension goes. And the only real way to practice that is, like I said, is to get in there and go through some reading comprehension questions. But you have access to all this. As I said, that tip I gave you in the beginning, where you can Google police officer practice exams, and then pick a state, pick any state, pick your state, it doesn't matter, right? And then go in there and see if you can find departments that have uploaded practice exams. Now, the one downside that I will say I see about these open resource exams for practice is it's very limited, but they do have study guides which help teach you the rules, right? A lot of rules that you'll need to know. Don't skim over that and just go to the practice test. Read all the rules. That's how you would practice for it. Once again, it's all that and stuff is kind of packaged nicely in the online course that we did. But if you want just to go out there and do your own research and try to look up all your own departments. You can find these open resources out there and use them, leverage them. A lot of people put a lot of pressure on these written exams. You know, some people say, hey, I'm horrible at math. Well, a lot of times math is pretty simple on them too. You know, it probably is going to be a word problem where suspect A stole these items and it's going to list the price for them. If these items, and it's going to give you a caveat, you know, if only these items were applied, would the suspect be considered a felon if a felony conviction is over $1,000 in theft? It's still just basic math, right? You're just saying, okay, based on these items, add them up. Do they meet over $1,000? Yes, they do. And then you would just mark the corresponding answer that goes with that. So practice questions help. And the main reason you want to practice these main reasons you want to practice for an exam is if it's timed, right? You want to be able, because I've seen a lot of members of mine, right, go through a written exam or reach out to me after they failed a written exam and say, Frank, you know, can I get some coaching? Can I get some guidance? Can I take your online course? And I say, hey, add timed element to this, because it's not that you can't work through and figure out a question, is you can't do it in the time requirement that they give you, right? So that's the big caveat that I would see for most people, is that with enough time they can work through any problem, right? And they can go back, check, and they're good. But if you're on a timed test, say, you know, you have 2 hours to complete this test and you can't get to it all in time, then you're automatically getting those questions that you don't mark or that you don't complete wrong, right? So it's just not helping your situation out. I would definitely be focusing on that too. You know, put yourself, say, hey, I'm going to answer these 10 questions. I'm going to do these 10 questions in 15 minutes, and set yourself on a timer on that. And then pick another 10 questions once you feel competent. Not the same 10 questions. Never study a study material twice. Let me rephrase. Never do a practice test twice. Never do a practice test twice. That's why we upload so many workbooks in our training. Because if you do a practice test twice and you say, oh, I did that one so much faster, it's probably because you did it based off memorization, especially if you do it within the same day or same week, right? Always have more practice questions than you need to. Never repeat it. Now, you can go through a study guide more than once. If there's a study guide that comes with it, say you go to open source. I'm going to use California, right? California, they have a Pellet B study guide course that you can go through, and it has, prior to the practice test, that has has an actual full study guide. And you go through that. I would read that over and over again, right? Especially if you're taking the Pellet B, because it's direct insight into the exam that you're taking. But I would not repeat the practice test that they have on. I would go find another practice test to do somewhere, even if it's a different state or different department within the state, or a different post exam, right? I would just go find a different one and just understand that, hey, I know I'm only looking at this for the core 3: reading comprehension, vocabulary, and writing. There we go. So knowing that, right? The last thing you want to do is be doing things off memory and have a false sense of security, saying, hey, yes, my time has improved. I'm much better at this. I got more answers right. Yeah, you got more answers right because you had that memorization. Even if it's subconscious, it's there, I promise you. So I would never repeat a practice exam. But as I said, going to be a million times redundant. I would review a study guide over and over, just not the portion of the practice exam. What else here? So the other concept to this is you're going to have to put in legwork unless you're going to find an organization. And there's plenty of organizations out there that have practice exam prep. Some, you know, I'm biased obviously towards ours, but some are better than others. Some are for specific just for exams. Some are just kind of generalized, right? Nothing wrong with that. It's still practice, but you're going to have to pick out the best one that best suits you, and then how you can access it, unless you're going to put in the legwork to go out there and research all these practice ones. I'm not saying that taking a test in a practice exam from an open resource in Florida is going to be the same as doing one in Texas. But I am telling you the core components are underlying, right? They're underlying. So it doesn't hurt you to always expand and expand and expand, and then be prepared that way. I hope this helps. Remember, those gifts are in the description. The Getting Started workshop is going to walk you through all the all the aspects of the hiring process, plus our hidden bonuses, to include the new eligibility exam in there for police candidates. Next is the free coaching call with myself or any of our other instructors. We'd be glad to sit down, discuss your specific hiring process, and give you some guidance for any questions you have. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.